Is this custom Predator on throne statue an X? He thinks he is. Let's check it out in this detailed review. Guys, welcome to the Xtreme channel. My name is Mr. X. This channel is all about extreme collectibles for the most part. And we're so about extreme collectibles, we're giving some away. Check this out. We're giving away these two Venom statues. Make sure you've liked this video, you've subscribed to the channel, and you've hit that bell notification. Also, we're giving away monthly prizes. We call them Xtrizes. All you have to do is comment on a video. If you comment on a video, you are entered to win. The more videos you comment on, the more likely you're gonna win. Now we're gonna dive right into this piece because there's so much to cover in the review. It is a massive, I would say one of a kind, but they actually made 269 of these. There's some crazy backstories about him, and let's just get started. So this is officially custom 1/4 scale, and we're gonna talk about that, Predator on throne. Now you may be looking at him, Mr. X, this is not from the Predator movies. You're absolutely right. I assume it's from the comics. I've never gotten to Predator comics, even though I would love to. So this is his name right at the bottom. I'm not even gonna try and pronounce it. And I know nothing about him. However, I know this looks badass, and that's why I got it, because I'm a huge Predator fan. I'm a huge Throne fan. It made sense. And you will not believe the crazy price on this. If you watch the unboxing video, you know that I paid a crap load for shipping. I paid more than the statue. And if you missed that video, you get to see me assemble him, unbox him, check it out right here. Now here's the story behind this guy. He went up for pre-order from a custom studio I've never heard of before, but I thought he looks badass. I didn't know any of their previous projects, but great communicators, that's always a good sign. I paid with PayPal, protection program, and he was gonna ship in less than 6 months, so perfect. So I put down my deposit of $300 or $400, and then a month later, I believe it's the guy in charge of the project, came to me and said, hey, we just found out this thing's gonna be huge, it's gonna weigh a ton, and shipping to the United States will be more than the statue. So I said, all right, fine, just cancel it, give me my money back. Then I saw the painted prototype, and I'm like, oh damn, I made a mistake. So I reached out to him, do you have any left? He's like, yes, we do. So I got it. He prepared me for shipping, and right now I have a lot of things coming from China, and they normally run from $200 to $500 to ship. They're running $500 to $1,000 for shipping because of the Captain Concho virus. So I was a little worried about him because in my head I already had an idea of how much shipping would cost. Unbelievably, this statue only cost $850. And I know one of two things either went through your head. If you're new to this world, you're like, holy, that's a lot of money. And if you're seasoned in this world, you're like, holy, that doesn't cost very much. So in my head, I knew shipping was gonna be more than $850, and I was scared to death he was gonna come at me with $1,500 or $2,000 for expedited DHL shipping. Shipping was $1,000. That kind of shocked me with everything that's going on in the world, because in my mind, I already prepared to pay that, or more. So all in, about $1,850 plus fees, and I meant to take pictures of how he was packaged up, but I got too excited. He came in 2 giant boxes, had some cool art boxes. Here's actually, I can show you a picture of those. And he was packaged excellent. I had 2 minor issues, which we'll talk about in design. So let's officially dive in. If you're new to the channel, we use a scale called an Xtreme scale. It's a 1 through 5 scale. Each number has a designated letter with it, essentially T through X. And our goal for statues is we only want to buy Xtreme statues. Of course, it doesn't happen because a lot of times, especially with customs, which are private commissions, which are traditionally not signed off on by whoever owns the license for it, you only see renders, so you don't know what it's going to look like until real life. So you wait for some jackass to buy everything and then show them on a YouTube video. And hopefully you'll find a moron stupid enough to do that, and then you can make your decisions based off those YouTube reviews. First thing we like to talk about is concept. Concept means what is the statue about? What's going on? If it's related to a movie, is it accurate? If it's related to a comic, is it accurate? Does it make sense? And just, is it cool? So let's look at this guy. Not only is Predator on a throne, and as I said, I love throne pieces. Throne pieces are always kind of, hey, I've conquered my enemies. It's maybe towards the end of the world, or I'm towards the end of my life, and I am very satisfied. I am the champion. And that is clearly displayed here because as most throne pieces, his enemies are conquered. Not only do you see some alien warriors, some xenomorphs, but you see some other creatures that you've seen in the Predator movies, and I'm speculating in the Predator comics. And he's made his throne out of them, including what I would assume is the queen alien in the back. And he is fully decked out with tons of switch out options, very satisfied with himself, almost like he's the leader or the ruler, kind of like Elder Predator. And they have so much different stuff going on in this throne statue and on his costume that we're going to go over. A lot of stuff is reminiscent of your traditional Predator from the movies. Some of it I would assume is from Predator in the comics, and some is probably their own affluence into it. This is an amazing piece. I love the concept. I am so happy I decided to pull the trigger. I think this is an X of a concept. It's a 5 out of 5. If you're going to go Predator, you're going to go on Throne, and it's going to look fantastic, and this does. And I fully believe this is going to be a breathtaking piece in my collection. Now we're going to talk about design, and there is so much to cover in design, so let's dive right in. First thing I'm going to show you is all the different display options, and it's crazy. First of all, on his chest, kind of where his shoulder blades are, right here, he has 2 little plates, and you're thinking, okay, that's not a big deal. That's a switch out? Yes, it is. He can essentially have what I assume are alien tails. Check these out. These are coming out of him, and they are pliable, they are bendable, so you can put them in any format you want. Here he is giving himself an X for the design, which we'll see if he's right. And here they are. Look at this. Look how long these are. And actually, I do have a tape measure, so let's check that out. They are about 1 meter. I think almost exactly 1 meter, maybe a little under. So for us Americans that are stubborn, that's a little over a yard, a little over 3 feet. And let's actually get the rest of the dimensions on him. His widest point is probably 22 inches. Kind of hard to tell because you can't get exactly down on him.
Hey, that's what she said.
His deepest point, similar issue, I'm going to say 26 to 27 inches. And the tallest point is right at 30 inches. Which we will talk about scale in a second, but let's finish with all the different display options. First, he has this gun on the back. Okay, great. You can remove the gun if you want to, but it has a light up feature. And check this out. This light up feature, the really cool thing about this, it doesn't show the best right here, but it is a laser pointer. See it on the wall right here? Now this, he's going to be facing people as they come down the stairs, so I can kind of have the target on them. That'd be neat. On his right hand, he has this giant staff. Now technically you can display it without this, but he still kind of shows his hand open. Check it out right here. So it is another display option. And then we have an unmasked portrait. And like most Predator pieces, it has a small bust stand to display that extra portrait. Because you see right here, he has a masked portrait as well. Now with this masked portrait, it has a light up feature, and right here the picture does not do it justice. It is actually very bright. And you also have the option, if you want to display the unmasked portrait, you can put the mask anywhere you want on the statue. Regarding scale, this is where I'm really perplexed. Originally when I purchased this, I swear they said it was 1/3. But recently I saw someone else post that this was 1/4, and I went back and looked at the original PO information and it said 1/4. But I have him in place and I don't think he's 1/4 scale. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Alright, so I'm really struggling with this scale because there's a couple complications here. The maquettes we just looked at are not actually scaled, they're maquettes. And most people judge them right around a 1/3 scale, maybe a little bit smaller, so closer to 4 scale, somewhere in that range, but bigger than a 1/4 scale. And that's especially true if you see those next to Sideshow Premium Format Dutch. Here's a picture of those two together. So I definitely believe those are larger than 1/4 scale, and yet they're smaller than him. Well, here's the legendary scale Wolf Predator. And as you guys probably know with this guy, legendary doesn't have a scale as well. Most people assume this is 1/3 to 1/2 scale. In my opinion, he's much closer to 1/3 because Predator is a very large guy. In fact, let me throw Dutch in front of these and let you have a picture on that. And then the scale gets even more complicated because the Queen alien skull is behind here. And with that, I also don't know this character. This character may be an oversized Predator. I don't know. So if you're really all about scales, then you're going to be really confused on this piece just like I am. But I don't think it takes away from how awesome this piece is at all. So is he 1/3? Is he 1/4? I frankly don't care because I have Predator pieces that are different sizes. I'm also getting about 4 other Predators from Prime One Studios. First one I'm getting is their City Hunter Predator. I love how you can mount it on the wall. I'm getting their Jungle Predator, sculpted by one of my favorite sculptors. And of course I'm getting a tree hanging victim with this guy. I am getting the Fugitive Predator, which actually ships next month, I think. So this is one of those reasons you should subscribe to the channel if you want to see the review on that. I'm getting the Ultimate Predator from that same movie, and I'm getting the Ultimate version. So this comes with the dog and all that good stuff. I haven't done it yet, but I'm probably going to pull the trigger. A Samurai and a Predator mixed together. Kind of a no-brainer on that. But back to this guy, a few other things with design. Normally, if it takes up this much space, that's a horrible thing. However, to me, and one of the things you're going to find out in Paint and Sculpt is I think the base is actually the best part of the statue. There's so much cool stuff going on. So I don't mind that. It's a pain, but I'll get past it. Second really interesting thing is a lot of what they did with the cuts and engineering is very smart. Like his hand right here is a separate piece, and it doesn't really brush up against the armrest here, but it looks like it does. So there's a lot of really close quarters that make sense. Well, a few other things I forgot to talk to you guys about is he has kind of some mixed media that is optional for display. Check out around his neck, he has this necklace of skulls. This is optional, and I don't even know if it's supposed to go around his neck, but that's where I put it. He has another piece here. I don't know where this goes, but you can essentially put it anywhere, and it looks pretty cool. We won't look at the Paint and Sculpt of these, but you can see it right here. I have it kind of draped at the front for now. And then he has a belt, and we'll look at the Paint and Sculpt on this closer later. But technically you could display him without this. But then you see that he has no junk, and if you look really close, you can actually see the peg that's coming out of his ass to make him sit in the chair. So I would not advise that. Now there were 2 things with design that are minor negatives, and then some that you can be the judge for. So first of all, his tooth right here was broken. You probably saw that in the unboxing. But it went back in, glued, fine, no problem, done. I'm surprised there weren't more breakages. Second thing, these are where his toothbrushes went. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you'll know if you watch that live unboxing. This bottom one does not stay. It doesn't seem like there's a magnet or anything like that. So I actually had to glue it in. Not really a huge deal, but it is noticeable. Last thing is his backpack or his gun on the back, it inserts via key. There's no magnet or anything, so it falls out very easy. I don't know what's going on there, but thankfully, it's not really a huge deal. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is when you think about breakages, you look at this statue and there's 2 big things. One are all the dreadlocks, which we're going to talk about. The other is the spear, and if you haven't noticed, some of these barbed tendrils coming out of it are bent. That's because they're plastic. They're pliable plastic, just like the alien tail, which I think that alien tail being pliable, it was very, very smart, because you'll see up close it looks really good. But on these, I just haven't fixed them yet. But if they did them as resin or PVC, they probably would have broken shipping. So I understand why they did that. I don't think that's a negative. It doesn't look as cool. It looks a little more toyish, but we'll look at it close with Paint and Sculpt. Now they did the exact same thing with the dreadlocks. The dreadlocks are pliable. You can actually move them, not a ton, but a decent amount, and you have to. Otherwise you can't get the head on flush, or you can't get it around the gun or the backpack. So I think, personally, I think that was a great move. Because as you've seen, I have the Sideshow ones that are sculpted, and I know they break very easily. So extremely complex project. I don't think it's a perfect design by all means, but I think they did a lot of very cool things with this, and I think that earns it a W, a rail, or a 4 out of 5 on the design. Paint and Sculpt, tons and stuff to cover. We're going to cover the bust display. We're going to cover the base, which there's a ton going on there, and we're going to cover Predator. Let's look at this bust display. This is so cool. Even conceptually, this is awesome. So essentially you have miniature xenomorph heads, and these aren't the skulls. So there's some green and brown and almost a translucent resin around them, and there's other skulls, some human, some what other creatures, all over it as well. I like this a lot. I like the fact they dolled it up. It's not just boring. There's some bones on top of that. Now here's the base. First I want to look at the stone on the base. The stone is awesome. There's great texture, there's great coloring, some of it's cracked up. Makes you think of very old, ancient, almost like Egyptian to an extent, even though there's not a lot of those sandy colors in there. So that's one thing that's going on this side of the base. The other thing are skulls. both large and small skulls. So you don't know if these are actual skulls or just sculptures they've made, because they all look very similar to human skulls. And who knows, maybe Predator is killing babies. And look at the front here. The front's a little bit bigger display of the skulls than you have on the sides, but pretty neat. Now I want to look at the top of the base. You see a lot of that stonework again. Same exact thing going on, looks fabulous. I love the mix of grays and browns they used in this, looks really good. Then you see some futuristic stuff going on. You see some piping and hoses and metallic stuff, and it's very worn, a lot of shading on it, a little bit of shine. These grates on the front of the base, where his feet are also very cool. This big metal plate at the front, and these colors contrast really well. Now let's start looking at the throne itself. First thing you have is a futuristic chair with more hoses and pipings and a lot of this copper color. So this might insinuate part of his spaceship, part of Planet Predator. Some more human skulls on it. And then you have skulls of other creatures that look familiar from, Predator 2 when they had all those skulls on the wall. They have one right up front, very cool looking creature. I don't know what it'd be called, but it is cool as hell. I want to move up his armrest first, and then you have another very similar creature on top of a stack of bones. And the coloring on this looks great. It has this bone type coloring, but it flows really well with the rest of the coloring of the futuristic part of the base. And on top of him, I assume is some type of xenomorph, some type of alien. The face does not look it. The face has more human skull attributes, but as you move back, you see the rest of it, very alien xenomorph type. And maybe these are what the xenomorph skulls look like in the comics, I don't know. But again, they did a great job with the paint and coloring, and the sculpt is just phenomenal. I haven't really talked much about the sculpt, but it looks awesome. And then you have the queen of the statue, both figuratively and literally. Starting at the back, you have the spine and some other bones going up. I love these segments, the different discs on them. And what's crazy, if this is displayed not in the middle of a table, you'll never see this, but it looks so good. And then you have the Queen Alien head. Now what's interesting about this, earlier when we were talking about scale, is how big is she supposed to be? So is this the improper scale as well? I love the ridges on this, I love the sculpt. It's undoubtedly the Queen, and the coloring is fantastic. I really like how they mixed it up. It doesn't make it doesn't make all these bones look too monotonous. Very, very smart. Starting at Predator, check out his feet. Now I'm just letting the cat out of the bag now, is I don't think Predator's as good as the throne. His feet look okay, his toes look okay. I think it's the sculpt that's a little bit lacking. I think the paint's much better. He has kind of these claws, sandals that are on there, and these are actually separate pieces with some leather wrapping behind it. Then you move up to his armored shin pads and knee pads. Some scratches on these, a little bit darker color, more similar to the base, but has a little bit of shine to it depending on the light you have on it. Here's his thighs. So his skin, very similar to the Predators from Sideshow. Little bit different shading, the dark shading, the light shading. This bumpy reptilian type skin, very classic Predator. His thighs are huge. They don't look very muscular, but it could be following the anatomy of how he's sitting. Let's look at his belt, and right here's a picture of it on. You can see the metal pad covering up what we assume would be a huge, cool little skull as the belt buckle. You see some of the discs kind of hanging from the side. And here I've actually laid out the belt for you so you can see some of the packages and maybe grenades or canteens or pouches of what he has going on here. These look okay. I've seen much better on Sideshow pieces, and especially Prime 1. Thankfully you can't really see them. They don't look bad by any means. Moving up his torso, you see the netting just like you saw on his legs. You see kind of a leather strap skull. A lot of the similar stuff going on with the skin, and then you move up and you start to see some more armor. Has that battle damage that you saw on his legs. That's also on the back. Here's another close-up of the gun. Looks really good. Darker color. These shoulder pads of the armor as well. And you start to move down his arms, kind of this segmented armor on his biceps. First, I want to look at his gauntlet with the toothbrushes. This looks awesome. I think those toothbrushes really add to it, make it look badass. Here's close-ups of the spear. As I said, this is plasticky looking up close. From about 2 feet away, you don't see it, but up close you do. And I understand, again, for shipping why they did it, but it's a little bit of a miss. Check out his hands. Has these spiky knuckles, brass knuckles, and the typical reptilian hands with the long fingernails. That's on both of them. They look good. I would have liked to see more of this coloring throughout his body. Now here's a huge miss. This gauntlet is a huge miss. Looks like they use decals on it and they do not look good, which is such a shame because I'm raving about the rest of this statue. But that's an easy fix for you. Whether you're a painter or whatever it is, I bet you can get some other decals. I think that's a miss. The red buttons look okay. Let's start at his mask portrait. Not sure if you noticed, but it's actually broken over one eye. So I think that's kind of neat. You see what are assumably alien claw marks around that eye. Really neat. I like the coloring they used on this. It's a different color than the rest of his armor. And I like the fact the mask is so different. Like I said, it may be very accurate to this character, but pretty neat. A lot of detail and inner workings on here, more than you're used to of a Predator plain mask, at least from the movies. Has some cool spikes coming out of the top and this gold trim on it. Let's look at his, so take a look at his dreads. These look really good. They actually look sculpted. I'm very impressed by his dreads. I think, as again, when I talked about design, what they did with his dreads, Sideshow and Prime 1 need to do the same thing. Kind of some bracelets in there, some fading on the color. It looks really good. Now to his unmasked portrait. I think this is good. I don't think it's amazing. It's something about the eyes, and I think they could have done some vein work to make it really, really pop, in my opinion. So let's look at the top here. You see kind of this black crown of almost spikes coming out of the side. The skin looks really good. I like what they did with that, the coloring and the texture on it. And then he kind of has the porcupine thing going on, kind of like the Elder Predator. I like that. And these are also that same pliable material, which is very smart, but it doesn't look it. I had to actually try and bend it, and hopefully it didn't break, and it didn't. I think his eyes, I'm not a fan of the paint job on his eyes. I don't know if it's the choice of the colors or if it's, I don't know if it's a choice of the colors or the application, but I think that could be done a little bit better. Then take a look at the inside of his mouth. I think they needed a little bit more moist effect. They needed more detail on the teeth. I don't like how the middle teeth are red. The outer mandible teeth look really good. They should have done more of that in the middle. And some vein work would have definitely helped on the paint. So I think I lean towards this portrait a little bit more, but because they have the extra bust display, I always like to display the unmasked portrait on the character and then the masked portrait here. Kind of like this is where they store their mask, even though this has dreadlocks. So for sure, I know if I was to rate the paint and sculpt on the base, I think I'd give it an X. I'd give it a 5 out of 5. I think the base is better than Predator. I think Predator is still very good. So there's a few things on the sculpt of Predator I think they could have done for more details, especially in the portrait, but nothing dramatic. So for that reason, I'm gonna give this guy an X on the sculpt. I think he's fantastic. I think the things they did with the chair and the elaborateness, there is so much going on here. I can't imagine how long it took to sculpt. The paint though, a little bit lacking on the skin, some of the stuff we talked about on the portrait, the bomb, the gauntlet, the fact they used decals and the red buttons on the side. Not as good, but it's still better than average, I'd say, if you look at everything else. So I think the paint is a 4 out of 5. Now, because this piece was recently released, let's talk about value. $850 for the price of this piece. That is even higher than an X for value, but let's face it, we have to consider shipping. So this piece was $1,850. Wow. Prime One Studios is selling their new Predators at $1,500 to $3,000. And the edition size on this is only 270, and you get so much for it. So I still think this is still a strong value, even at $1,850. I think the value is a 4 out of 5. It's a W. In short, I'm gushing about this piece. I love it. I think the concept alone does leaps and bounds for it, but they also executed on the paint and sculpt for the most part. So I think overall we're gonna give this piece an X. I think this is an X piece. This is, I don't want to use the word grail, but it could definitely be close to that. Here's some close-up video for you guys just to take it in. If you like this kind of stuff, make sure to click on that logo. Here's some other cool Predator and Alien reviews that I've done of some awesome Grail pieces as well. Really appreciate you guys watching. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Take care.